necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And hello, K-Man, and welcome to another episode of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and welcome to Straight Talk. How are you today, Mr. Harris?
I'm good, Mr. Solomon. What started off as a beautiful day in paradise with some of that rain we predicted yesterday. Nice to see the forecast held true with the morning forecast anyway. But I think as soon as around 9:30, 10 o'clock came around, it was back to surface of the sun. And whilst it was overcast skies, I think the humidity took care of the heat factor, and it was another warm day in paradise.
Well, not that I can even remember now, to be honest with you, what the forecast was. But yeah, I'll take your word on it.
Yeah, well, we promised, or we suggested that it would be 30% chance of showers, but in particular, we might see some morning showers. And for that part, the forecast was accurate. And I will also add that the forecast in terms of the heat index today, expecting a heat index about 103 degrees. Whilst I wasn't outside with my thermometer, nor did I have any eggs on my hood, I certainly believe that it certainly felt like 103, if not hotter. So for the most part, the weather forecast published by the Kimberley's National Weather Service, as we read out yesterday, did hold true to form.
All right. Well, there you go.
There you go. As far as tonight and tomorrow, what can we expect, you might ask? I'm glad you asked, Ellio. Well, residual moisture
You read my mind.
I read your mind. Residual moisture is expected to continue across the Kimberleys for the remainder of the day into this evening, along with some more Saharan dust haze. Moderate winds and seas are expected over the next 24 hours. And Doppler radar images show showers to the west of Grand Cayman, moving towards the northwest. Tonight, partly cloudy skies and hazy, with a 30% chance of showers. Temperatures will fall to the low 80s. Winds will be east to southeast at 10 to 15 knots, and seas will be moderate, with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. Tomorrow, unfortunately, partly sunny skies. When they say partly sunny, that means very little chance of rain, although the forecast does forecast 30% chance of showers this time, though, in the afternoon. So today was in the morning, tomorrow's in the afternoon. Temperatures will rise to the low 90s, but the heat index will feel closer to another 103-degree Fahrenheit day. Winds will be out of the northeast to east at 10 to 15 knots, and seas will be moderate with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. The outlook calls for similar weather conditions to continue through until Thursday. So that's a quick look at your weather tonight and tomorrow, brought to you by the Cayman Islands National Weather Service. So there you have it.
All righty.
How was your day?
My day,
what did you do today?
Today's an admin day, just doing a lot of administrative stuff, kept busy.
I thought you might have been down at the farm watching, the village Ram, deal with his business that you shared with us yesterday.
Don't get me going on that now.
Have you given the Ram a name yet?
I have more interesting things to do other than to watch the Ram kind of, how can I say? Prime the pumps.
Prime the pumps, indeed.
All I can say is that he's there. I'm sure he's going to do his job.
And I'm sure all the lady goats are happy to see him.
Yeah.
Put on their favorite lipstick and said, "Hello, big boy."
Something like that. So, no, I was busy doing admin stuff, but I am tired today. It's like, oh, my God. Could have something to do with the sun, too. Who knows?
Yeah, it's a little warm.
It probably makes work just about twice as difficult. But, yeah, you have something on your mind. I see it. Say it.
I was going to ask, again, back to the goats, what is the birthing period from, the point of copulation to the point of, when they give birth? Humans, it's 9 months.
I think it's 5 months.
5 months? Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I don't think anyone's counting the specific days, but it's about 5 months. And then ideally you should give a little bit of a break in between. But some people don't exercise that as much. They kind of leave it up to the goats to decide. And normally once you drop the ram in there, even if they're not ready, they become ready.
Fair enough.
So it's
Mother Nature knows what she's doing.
It's a nature thing. I wasn't ready, but I'm now ready. And that it's, like I said, from an investment standpoint, there's very few things that you can kind of just put your money there and it just does its own thing, and you come back 5 months later and voila. My money's doubled.
Quite right indeed.
If you have a long enough time to wait for that, I can assure you the doubling is exponential and you'll do well.
You'll do very well indeed.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the listening audience for this Tuesday here on Straight Talk. The phone lines will again be open at 745-2626 as they have been all week. You can also reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. And if you prefer email, well, you can send us an email to host@straighttalk.ky. No guest scheduled to be in studios today, but certainly had a vibrant and, I dare say, informative, if not enlightening and elevating conversation yesterday on minimum wage. Thank you again, Mr. Solomon, for your contributions. It was...
Do you have a violin in the back there or something?
I don't have a violin in the back there, but I was going to...
You see your feet are moving like a violin.
I was going to say to you that in my travels, which they weren't many because, again, it was hot outside, and I tried to keep it to a minimum.
I appreciate
But in my travels, there were at least 4 individuals who were obviously listening and thought last night's discussion was, in the words of one, riveting, and in the words of someone else, revealing and interesting. So I accepted all of their gratitude, took it all on myself.
Took the compliments on our behalf.
Myself on our behalf.
There you go.
I promised that I would pass them on to you, who did most of the heavy lifting yesterday.
That's a good one. I like that. That really makes me laugh. Well, thank you for that wonderful compliment. I never knew my father.
I never knew my father.
Well, thank you for telling me how great of a job I did on the minimum wage, he says.
Yes, well done. Well done. It was a good discussion yesterday, I got to tell you. And obviously you've done your homework on the subject, but more to the point, as you often say, it's easy to remember because it's the truth. It's how you really feel about things.
That's the one, Austin. Honestly, like I said, I mean, I think the math is there, and sometimes it befuddles me when somebody hasn't reached your position, but that's how life is. Because who knows? I could be pedaling in the wrong direction, even though I doubt it. But interestingly enough, yesterday someone was talking about the issue of electrical bills being the highest thing. So of course, I just wanted to do a sanity check, and again, double checking. And again, this is not to knock the individual. I like the fact, I think Straight Talk is a place for thinkers, right? And we're all thinkers. And I think that I want everyone to understand that the whole issue of rent and the issue of mortgages, you can see now it has become so insidious, so secret, so stealthy.
Yes.
We've become so accustomed to it that the individual cries that electricity is the highest one. Just think about that. When I'm pretty sure if you really sat and thought about it, you and I would both know that between 40 to 50% of your salary is going towards rent, mortgage. And bear in mind that that's the same thing happening with businesses. So a guy is going out and building a plaza. Austin et al. Wants to build start a small business. He has all his great ideas on how he's going to sell cakes for $3 because this is really going to bring down the cost of living. Little did he know.
I'm going to corner the market, he said to himself.
Corner the market, he thinks. And then he gets there and they say, oh, yes, your monthly rent will be $15,000 a month. And why is that? Because somebody's paying a high mortgage and they need to get to their BE, their break-even point. And everybody trying to get to their BE and trying to be just what they have to be ends up meaning that, this is the price that it's going to be. And it's pretty high.
Yeah.
And if you go and you remember back in your day when you went to get a mortgage, been a long time for me, but you would end up in a situation where we say, well, we need to make sure that this doesn't exceed your debt service ratio, which I think at the time was somewhere around 46%. I have no idea where it is now, but it kind of gives you an idea of the significant chunk of money that's coming out of your pay in order to cover the rent, in order to cover the mortgage. So yes, electricity is one of those things. We get the monthly statement, it slaps us in our face, it weakens our knees, and it hurts us dearly. But I can assure you, if amongst other things, and like I said, it's not, I don't really think it's a matter of, all of these things are important, but if you had to tackle one, I think that that's the first one you need to tackle because it is the largest one coming out. I think money, CUC, the electricity is actually somewhere around 10 to 18% of the salary, as opposed to 40 to 50. So all these things need to be tackled. And to your point, I continue to talk about the minimum wage because it is extremely important. And it just saddens me what I continue to see in relation to politics, not making any friends when I'm saying this, of course, is that everything seems to be on the fly. It's spontaneity. It's what's going to get me a vote. It's what sounds good, etc. The whole world seems to be going there. And I believe that you find solutions that's going to really benefit the people of this country by making some really tough decisions. And not that he's here, but again, I mentioned yesterday the Honorable Linford Pearson. I remember back in the day when it was, again, the challenges of the telcos, and I don't think it's anything different today. That's how we solve the problems, and that's how we're going to really make the country better. So I want to encourage persons that when they hear about these quick and easy solutions, you should take it just as that the three things killing the world is quick, easy, and emotions.
Indeed.
At least in my opinion.
Well, speaking of quick and easy, or to the contrary of it, in the good news category for today, and I'm going to include it in the good news category, because it speaks on another subject that really serves to annoy us. In addition to the cost of living and what we pay in mortgage and then what we pay for fuel and the associated cost of food that is, of course, tied to fuel. Another issue that, sticks in our craw, and we were again reminded of it this morning, at least I was, which of course was exasperated only because it was raining, and that is traffic. Traffic continues to be a bane on most persons' life in the morning, but that tends to get worse rather when it rains. I made the comment today, I said, I don't know what it is about canyons and raindrops, but when it rains, we slow down and apply even extra caution, which in bumper-to-bumper traffic, that is not always a good thing. But, hey, at least there were no accidents to report of.
Yeah, we used to say something like that. Someone only has to spit on the ground, and then everything slows down.
It's amazing. I mean, a little bit of rain falls, and believe me, you notice it right away. It's a good thing I don't suffer from road rage, but I can clearly, empathize with those who do, particularly when it's raining. Traffic was horrible this morning, largely blamed on, as they say, blame it on the rain. Remember those guys that used to lip sync?
I love
them.
Was it them that sang that song?
Well, it was.
Or they just came to your mind?
It was in their lyrics. Milli Vanilli.
No, man. Blame it on the rain. Anyway, I'll take your word on it.
Well, I'm sure it was an original song written by somebody else, which arguably could apply to all of Milli Vanilli's music.
But I do remember those guys.
They did popularize it in one of their songs. But during question and answer time in Parliament, the Honourable Minister of Infrastructure, the Honourable J.E. Banks, in responding to a question put to him by the newest MP for Red Bay, Mr. Roy Tatum, asking about when we might see a modern public transport system implemented and presented in the Cayman Islands. The minister stated that the consultants are currently supporting the ministry in preparing the strategic outline business case. He highlighted that it will offer a high-level assessment on transportation challenges, as well as presenting options and delivery models that could very well form the foundation of future decision-making. So glittering generalities. But he did say that the minister confirmed that it is expected to be completed. That is the strategic outline case by the end of summer. And once finalized, the report will be submitted to cabinet for review and direction. Now, it's not the really great news we were waiting on. That is, of course, when can we read this report and see what it recommends? The fact that it's, going to cabinet by the end of summer does not mean or does not give any indication when they may choose to release it. And to my point, the minister said, and I quote, "The ministry will determine the appropriate timing and format for the public release following the internal and cabinet level consideration. The appropriate timing and format. When it is politically convenient or fits my appropriate timing, then I will release it. But I say that it's good news because once you and I know that this document is in the hands of cabinet, then not only can you and I, agitate for it to be released, but anyone east of Tropical Gardens who deals with traffic on a regular basis every day can lobby their respective MPs and encourage them to apply pressure on the minister and the government to release this report. So at the very least, we can have some idea what may have been recommended by those perhaps smarter than we are in terms of how to address traffic. Although the government is in possession of at least 10 recommendations that, again, we talk about what is low-hanging fruit. They could choose to adopt tomorrow and implement immediately, but we are going to wait for the strategic outline business case. So whatever that is, the wheels do move slowly in government, but we are getting closer to that light at the end of the tunnel, and that is, of course, hopefully by the end of summer. At the very least, cabinet will be in possession of this report, and we can do our part to agitate for its release. And maybe that agitation might result in, I don't know, the report ending up on one's windshield, as does happen from time to time. Not that I'm encouraging any politician to be in breach of the rules. I'm just saying, if you wanted to.
Talk about a new way to table a report.
That's right.
On your windshield.
On my windshield, yes. And if you do put it on my windshield, I promise you, the very moment I will make it a public document by bringing it to this program and sharing it for all to see far and wide.
Shining a light on it.
Shining a light on it, because this is an important issue. And, again, whilst I'm under no illusion that public transport will cause traffic to just simply evaporate, forgive the phrase, but it will go a long way to improving the traffic situation and certainly limiting the number of cars, presumably, that we find on Cayman roads. And for me, that is a good thing. So hopefully that's good news for some who are listening. Again, we have to wait to end the summer. But listen, whilst that seems like far away, today's already the 1st of July. So really, the end of summer will be here before we blink.
So at this time frame that's being mentioned, it sounds then like you'll be able to actually have an answer, and it might actually be a part of the SPS that'll be presented in November.
Quite right. Very good point. Very, very good observation. It certainly would be ideal if the government is serious about addressing and implementing public transportation. The time, to quote the minister's words, let me get it right, the appropriate timing of releasing that information certainly would be when they present their strategic policy statement, which hopefully will include plans for a public transportation system. So at the very latest, to my colleague's point, brilliant observation, that it could very well form part of the government's SPS when they bring it in November before Parliament. So that in and of itself is good news, giving us some idea of a timeline. Now, if it doesn't find its way in the SPS, that means, well, unfortunately, bad news that 4 years will come and go, and we will still be no closer to introducing a public transportation system. But I maintain optimism in our government rather than pessimism that they will do the right thing, because, again, they too have to sit in traffic as well. In other good news, we see in the headlines, Cayman Airways promotes how to talk like a Caymanian high in the skies. According to the Cayman Compass today, flying in the skies with Cayman Airways just got a bit more Caymanian with the national airline introduction of Speak Like a Caymanian napkins, its latest in-flight enhancement to international flights, featuring authentic Caymanian sayings and phrases. With inspiration from the Cayman Islands Dictionary, 3 initial napkins are designed to give passengers a fun and memorable introduction to the unique linguistic heritage of the Cayman Islands, according to a Cayman Airways press release. So what, might you ask, do these 3 or first early release napkins have to say, and what words did they choose? Well, they choose the words Erectly, Gallivanting, and Look Yeah. And for those of you who are uninitiated, Erectly is an adverb meaning soon come, or I'll be there directly in the few moments. Gallivanting, spelled with a V, but we pronounce our V's like W's and our W's like V's. So gallivanting means it's a verb to explore joyfully in search of fun and or excitement. And looky, well, you can figure that out for yourself. It just means look at this. What have we here?
Look here.
By Jove, I think we've got it.
Look here. Look here.
Look here. Quite right.
So now, where is the author of that book? What was the young man that wrote that book?
You know, it's a very...
He's gotten lost in this whole picture.
He did, but it was fun. Let me look it up right now. The Cayman Islands Dictionary. You talk while I
remember. Well, you know, I'll take this to say I remember when that young man launched that book because I was very happy for him. But
Kevin Goring.
That's it. I was very happy for him when he did that because I remember saying, God, he beat me to it. It was one of those things that I always thought about doing, you know. But there you go. When you're thinking about something, somebody else has the same idea. So I was very pleased when he did it. And yeah, I think he should get some public recognition for that.
No, I absolutely.
There's very few people that come around and actually document anything that carries us in terms of putting some of our culture in stone or in writing. And I think he, being a very young man, took a very ambitious bite out of it. I think he did a very great job.
Absolutely.
So it's most unfortunate that he's not being mentioned in that article.
That's a very good point. Let me just take a quick look just to make sure that I didn't miss anything because I just obviously scanned the article and wanted to provide, the highlights. Blah, 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 blah,
blah, blah, blah, blah, blah.
No mention of Mr. Goring by name at all. Only, of course, here on Straight Talk do we, again, as we say, no.
They mentioned it?
Hold on.
Rewind and come again.
What a thing. It says, after years of collecting words and phrases, Kevin Goring, so his name is called in the article, author of the Cayman Islands Dictionary, told the Cayman Compass what a thing it is to see the Cayman Islands Dictionary being extended in this way. To know that our culture getting this much exposure, boy, that just warms my heart, and I can't wait to fly Cayman Airways
just so
I can see it for myself. So, again, congratulations, Mr. Goring.
Congratulations.
And certainly to your point, Ellio, that we hope that the visitors who choose to fly to the Cayman Islands will get a bit of a chuckle from the napkins whilst they're enjoying their 7 Fathoms rum punch and, of course, their new K-Brew special beer, which is made just exclusively for Cayman Airways.
Mm-hmm.
And together with those liquid libations, they will learn how to speak like a Caymanian and laugh at the same time. And maybe they will add to their list of possessions, i.e. must-haves, before they depart the Cayman Islands, the Cayman Islands Dictionary written by our very own Kevin Goring. So that's a good thing.
I was thinking of another phrase that could put on that serviette. It could say, this tissue for your mouth only.
For your mouth only. Quite right. Hey, you never know.
You get it, right, Austin?
I get it completely. And just very quickly, speaking of books,
right?
An opportunity to highlight our guest tomorrow.
Correct. More good news?
Forward to it. More good news. Our very good friend, Mr. Roy Bodden, the president emeritus of the University College of the Cayman Islands, has written what we believe would be his 4th book, and we will have the opportunity to share those details with members of our listening audience. Mr. Roy Bodden will be our guest as he unveils his latest creation, Deconstructing Development, Immigration, Society, and Economy in the early 21st century Cayman. Ellio had an opportunity to peruse it over the weekend. I will take it tonight to peruse it as quickly as I can. Let's see, how many pages does it consist of? Certainly over 154 pages of what one would call a book. This is closer to like 300. I can't say I'll get through all of it, but I absolutely will make an effort to put a dent in it so that we can obviously chat from a position of knowledge as we discuss with our good friend the latest news of his latest publication. So tomorrow at 5 o'clock, we encourage you to tune into the program as Mr. Roy Bodden will be our guest, and we'll be talking about his latest book and what is contained in the pages. I will certainly encourage everyone, readers or those who certainly care about the history of the Cayman Islands, to purchase this and the other books that preceded it. They certainly form part of our mutual library, and we hope they will be a part of yours. With Christmas coming up, they make a great stocking stuffer item. So tune in tomorrow at 5 o'clock as we host Roy Bodden as our guest, talking about his latest book. 58 minutes now past the hour of 4 o'clock is the time in studios, and we do need to pause and take a short commercial break. As usual, check in with the top of the hour news brought to you by the BBC. And boy, is there all sorts of interesting information in today's news, not least of which your favorite entertainer, Sean Diddy Combs, had a partial verdict handed out today. Want to hear more about it? Tune into the BBC coming up next. But keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk still to come. The phone lines are open at 745-2626 right here on Bobo 103.1 FM.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Vindigill with the BBC News. The US Senate has narrowly passed Donald Trump's sweeping tax and spending bill on the casting vote of Vice President J.D. Vance. 3 Republicans, alarmed by the prospect of adding trillions to the national debt, joined Democrats in opposing it. The bill now returns to the House of Representatives, where it is likely to meet further resistance from within Mr. Trump's own party. However, the US Senate Majority Leader John Thune of South Dakota welcomed today's result.
Now we're here, passing legislation that will permanently extend tax relief for hardworking Americans. Mr. President, that will spur economic growth and more jobs and opportunities for American workers. That will rebuild our military, secure our borders, unleash American energy, and cut waste, fraud, and abuse in federal programs.
The jury in the sex trafficking trial of the rap star Sean Diddy Combs has reached a verdict on most of the charges against him, but they're deadlocked on the most serious count of racketeering conspiracy. The details of their partial verdict have not been made public. Nomia Iqbal is outside court.
They say they are unable to reach a verdict on count one. That's the much more complicated charge. The government's argument is that Sean Diddy Combs ran his businesses like a criminal enterprise, and that was how he was able to carry out the allegations of sexual abuse. But the jury has not been able to reach a verdict on that, and they are saying that that is because both sides have opinions that are unmovable, unpersuadable.
The British government has faced a substantial revolt by its own MPs over legislation aimed at making it harder for some people to claim health and disability-related benefits. Despite last-minute concessions, 44 Labour members voted against the changes. Here's our political correspondent, Rob Watson.
The government might have won the vote, but Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has been deeply damaged in the process, and now his own MPs are questioning his judgment and leadership. Attempting to reduce the numbers of those claiming health-related payments was always going to be a challenge for a left-of-centre party like Labour. But Sir Keir Starmer is accused of failing to judge the mood of his party, and critics now doubt his ability to deliver other difficult changes in the rest of this parliament.
In Russia, a state of emergency has been declared in the region where a weapons factory that manufactures air defence systems was hit by Ukrainian drones. Without confirming that it was a weapons factory that had been hit, the local head said a fire had been put out at an enterprise in Ijevsk. It's nearly 1,000 kilometres east of Moscow. BBC News. The US Agency for International Development has officially implementing foreign aid. America's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, said US foreign assistance would now be used to advance US interests, invest in America's allies and counter China. He said in 2023, most countries in sub-Saharan Africa did not vote with the US on the central resolutions at the UN, despite receiving more than $160 billion since 1991. Mali's army says suspected Islamist gunmen have attacked several military sites in a series of coordinated raids. An army camp and police stations in the western city of Kayes were among those targeted. Attacks have been reported in at least 7 towns. Of websites to stop artificial intelligence bots from accessing their content without permission. Cloudflare, which hosts around a fifth of the internet, has rolled out a tool that targets what are known as crawlers. Cloudflare's co-founder and CEO is Matthew Price.
It applies on pages that have some indication that there's an intent to monetize them. So if they have an advertisement on them, if they're behind a paywall, then by default, we will block that. Now, a publisher, if they decide they want to allow AI bots, they can obviously turn that off and allow them in. But we believe that having now worked with publishers all the way from Adweek to Ziff Davis and everyone in between, including the BBC, that they are tired of AI bots taking their content and not compensating them for that content.
In basketball, the NBA's most valuable player, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, has agreed to sign a new contract worth $300 million with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The deal would make Shai's annual salary $71 million. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, and the time in studios now 7 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. And the phone lines, they are open. The number to call, 745-2626 is the number in studio. You can give us a call if you want to be a part of the discussion, if you want to raise an issue that you'd like us to perhaps tackle on your behalf, or you can also ask a question or two, and hopefully between the two of us, we might be able to answer it for you. Likewise, if calling on the air isn't your thing, you can take advantage of our version of a 1-800 number by dialing our WhatsApp number 928-2562. And from there, you can either send us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. Either way, all your calls and comments will be added to our discussion, with the only exception that the authors will remain anonymous unless otherwise stipulated by you. Ellio, just with your permission, want to sort of, look to the headlines over the past of the discussion that you and I had, as we say, when a comprehensive discussion on the subject, ventilating the accounts surplus or deficit of the Cayman Islands taxpayer going forward, despite what started the year as a very promising, if not record-breaking, first quarter earnings. Minister of Finance Ralston Anglin in Parliament has warned that unless the Cayman Islands government can reverse the trend of growing monthly operational deficits for the remainder of the year, it is very likely that the government and the people of the Cayman Islands will face a significant deficit come 2025. Now, whilst he did not state this, certainly that was the forecast prediction, as you will recall, from the PREFU, i.e. the pre-election economic financial outlook that we discussed in great detail shortly after or shortly before the last general election. And we discussed it again when we saw the first quarter earnings of this year. In that prediction, though, it suggested that both 2025 and 2026 could be deficit years for the Cayman Islands. Minister Anglin was answering the question during the new parliamentary session last week and this week, where he explained to the Deputy Opposition Leader, the Honourable Kenneth Bryan, that the larger than forecast surplus in the first quarter will be wiped out if the National Coalition for Caymanian Government cannot get a grip on the increased spending of the last administration. He explained that the main problem was the growing public spending created during the previous administration's last few months in office. Now, whilst I am happy to take Minister Anglin on his word, we both know that is simply not true. Whilst there was significant spending, and there always is significant spending of previous administrations in the closing moments of any four-year term, based on our previous discussion, we identified by presenting the discussion and the numbers that the overspend occurred as early as 2023, and that sort of spiraled itself out of control until the end or the closing moments of 2024. But delivering a comprehensive answer, the finance minister said that the first quarter of each year always produces a surplus, whilst the next 9 months usually operate at a deficit. And he expects deficits for April and May of this year to have grown by significant amounts. He says, and I quote, "The possibility of a deficit for 2025 can be significantly attributed to expansionary fiscal policies that were approved during 2024 and the 4-month period ending April 30th. He said it would be challenging to rein in the UPM's public spending commitments, such as the large increase in financial assistance to Caymanians for food, rent, medical expenses, and financial grants given to churches for developing hurricane and community centers." Now, on the face of it, spending in these areas, i.e. spending on Caymanians who are less fortunate, spending on churches, again, when we talk about the shortage of hurricane shelters, at face value, it doesn't appear to be a bad thing. It's sometimes what one might argue necessary spending, and certainly something that Caymanians continually argue that when they see surplus, they say, well, good, spend this on us for a change. And that clearly suggests that's what the UPM administration did, albeit in the closing moments of their 4-year administration, which again highlights to me and proves to me that where the spending really went off the rails occurred as early as 2023, when the government of the day spent $81 million over and above what was expended. And that, of course, had a bit of a mushroom cloud effect as it spread. And, of course, the effect of that was felt over the following years. But either way, the pre-election economic forecast or economic outlook does in fact ring true. And the government of the day, the new incoming government, are grappling with the spending habits that occurred under the previous administration, and they are expecting a deficit at the end of 2025. And again, no mention has been made of 2026, but obviously they're going to be, or they're going to try to put on the most optimistic face as it relates to 2026 to suggest they've obviously been able to tackle it. But I will point out something interesting. Since we're acknowledging now, and when I say we, the government of the Cayman Islands, the current administration, that the preview was in fact on target, then it might be worthy of consideration that as part of that pre-election financial update that was presented by the Honorable Financial Secretary, he also went on to suggest that it is also unlikely that given the financial constraints of the government, that it is unlikely they will be able to conclude 2025 without new borrowing, which of course will only add to the fiscal debt situation and fitting along the lines of our previous discussion in terms of what are the costs that associate the largest part of cost to the average person on the street. That also applies to the government, and financing costs have also been a challenge for government. So the uncontrolled spending of the previous administration, which shouldn't surprise anybody, is likely to lead us to a deficit at the end of this year, and a means of staving off that deficit or continuing to pay for the projects that are either committed or will be committed by the SPS is unlikely to happen without new borrowing. I guess it remains to be seen on the latter whether the borrowing will actually occur. But these were the predictions made by the financial secretary, and they continue to ring true, suggesting that we were absolutely 110% on target in our previous discussions on this topic. So I thought that was rather encouraging for our standpoint, but not so encouraging for the wider Cayman Islands.
Well, again, it's going to be, it's a challenge, first of all, politically for the Minister of Finance to kind of generally point and say the previous administration, because they were probably previous administrations.
Yes.
And again, he can't possibly do so. And I'm sure he finds himself and understands the position very well. He finds it very difficult to be able to say simply the past government, considering that at least 4 of them are arguably in cabinet now.
Good point.
Are in the government right now. So if they're looking for dead bodies, those 4 probably can't help.
Very good observation.
But should do until something is proven otherwise. And he's saying that, that there was a significant level of expenditures. Whether it all occurred in 1 year or whether it occurred in the previous 3, I have no idea. But what I would encourage him to do is this is probably a good opportunity for the greatest level of transparency. Let's get out there and publish the numbers and let the public see exactly what was spent and where it was spent, and have the court of public opinion determine whether that was good spending of their money. I think that's the way you should do it, rather than just making the statement and not offer that transparency. And I'm not suggesting that he doesn't have the intentions of doing that, but I would encourage the Minister of Finance to do just that. And yeah, it's going to be some challenges to see exactly what's going to happen. And I'm sure that amongst other things, the reason why the Minister of Finance would have been pushing to try to see if we can get the SPS later on in the year would be because the engineering side of it says, yeah, okay, you want that bridge, but is it engineering-wise, is it feasible? Do I have the money to support and hold that up? And I think in large part, that's what they have to do. They have to count beans, and they have to start saying, are you going to be able to fulfill this based on, what we see coming in and what the projections are going to be. I'll also like to, well, I don't know if I like to, but I will add again that there's a significant amount of money that comes in from cruise tourism, and those monies are going to be reducing significantly.
Yes.
And I want to stress
a loss of at least $200 million in pre-COVID time.
In this particular case, I was going to speak roughly to that 40 or 50 million that comes direct to the government in terms of their coffers, as opposed, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe you could slip it on to the tail or to the tail end or whatever, the front end of the next government, be a people's pleaser, or you want to do what's right for the country.
Yes.
Unfortunately, most of the time, if you want to get elected and stay elected, you've got to be a people's pleaser, right? And just get out there and start making voices on behalf of the people, even if it doesn't make any sense. But that I can assure you is going to be one area where you're going to be getting a dent in terms of government revenues. So you can pretty much, how to say, I don't know, bob your shoes, prepare Alice or whatever it is, Kansas. Yeah, Houston, we're in trouble. Because at the end of the day, there's going to be declines coming in cruise revenues. And so government has to find that money somewhere.
You can hope in one hand and wish in the next and see which one fills up first.
Yeah.
But I suspect, to your point, both will be left wanting if the current situation is left unattended. And I agree with you 100%.
And it's going to be tough politically for them or some government. And I think it's going to seriously be within this administration. I don't think it's going to take that long. It's probably going to start to hit rock bottom in the next one. But even in this administration, there's going to be declines. And already we see the moves on the government, not blaming them for that necessarily, to some extent. But they're making the moves in terms of putting marijuana and lottery before the
Law Reform Commission.
The Law Reform Commission.
Yeah,
okay? So they want talking about moving forward with that. Nothing's being mentioned about cruise. I mentioned a few days ago that no one attended the FCCA meeting held just a week or two ago.
Yes.
You can dance around it as long as you want. But you're not going to open up a $50 million hole in this boat called Cayman Islands government and you not have to find something to stuff it with.
That's why we keep insisting that we can nay afford to be choosy or worse, to ignore any revenue coming into this country because we really do need it.
So I look forward to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, so do I, my friend. A writer to the program, and speaking of the expected deficit position at the end of 2025, asks, I think, a meritorious question. It says, so how does the Cayman Brac School of Opulence factor into this? Well, certainly it would suggest to us that the government of the day will certainly be seeking to draw back the reins of that project to begin with. Certainly it is, again, a lofty project and one that, again, asks the question, is it a question of needs over wants or wants over needs? And we're going to really have to take a very careful look at that expenditure. And I'm sure the government of the day is doing so.
I understand that the minister, sorry to interrupt you, I understand that the Minister of Finance did go over to the BRAC. I don't recall getting any report, anything being made public. But I would imagine that the government was very much considering what can be done in terms of that project, either one, canceling it, delaying it, reducing the size in terms of trying to save money. But like I said, I didn't actually hear anything in return. And I would like to believe, or I wouldn't say I'd like to believe, I believe that whoever is doing these contracts, based on anyone with some political experience, they would probably try to make those contracts as waterproof as possible. You know? And they're not going to make it so easy for you to just kind of break it. I would imagine somebody's going to say, listen, you're going to make this contract iron-proof, okay, or bulletproof, because at the end of the day, I don't want to be starting something and then we stop. We've been there before. We've been down this road before.
As we found out most recently with the Regen contract costing us, in the region almost of $18 million to get out of.
Cancel, and then you have to spend another $17.7 million.
No, absolutely. But absolutely, without a doubt, whether it be the Cayman Brac School, whether it be the Scranton Park, or some of the more grandiose projects of the previous administration, not saying they aren't nice things, and certainly if we can afford it, then sure, why not present it? But these projects have to be worried that they will not, be fulfilled as was planned in the architectural renderings of them. And it's going to come down to really, it's not personal. It is purely, business, purely in terms of what we can and cannot afford. And in the absence of that, if we still want these projects, then Joe Public, taxpayer, you and me, can expect our taxes to rise. And continuing our conversation yesterday, that will have the obvious run-on effect in terms of our own individual costs of living. Just very quickly, as it relates to whether or not the government are starting to draw back the reins, also in question and answer time in Parliament, we saw opposition members raising questions over police funding in Parliament on Friday, suggesting that the police, as we know, are under-resourced and are in need of, a cash injection to balance against several critical resourcing challenges, including funding constraints that have impacted the RCIPS's ability to scale operations at pace. And this conversation basically deals with human capital, the number of bodies, and we've talked about the shortage of those bodies as identified by the police commissioner when he presented the annual police crime statistics, and he highlighted this more than once. But this urged and brought the opposition leader, Honorable Kenneth Bryan, to his feet, asking again of the Minister of Finance, what happened to, quote unquote, the substantial $7.7 million that was approved by Cabinet in March by the previous government that was going to be put towards these new hires. In response, the acting governor, Ms. Gloria McFeel-Nixon, said what she can confirm is that they received prior approval through Section 11.5 of the Public Finance and Management Act of a sum of $1.9 million, not $7.7 million, which also urged the former premier, Honorable Juliana O'Connor-Connolly, to stand on her feet, asking the question and saying, well, hang on, it wasn't $12 million that had been approved by the previous administration, and that money was earmarked specifically to add between 77 and 79 new officers to the overall complement of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service.
That's a fair amount of staff.
That's a fair amount of staff.
Oh, wow.
It certainly would, at least at face value, address any resource shortcomings that the police are currently faced with right now. Unfortunately for the acting governor, she really only had one response in which to give to the second round of questions, and that simply
Will it
was
get back to you?
She certainly reaffirmed what she said the first time. You know, despite whatever the opposition, aka former members of the previous administration, may have approved, what has been communicated to the police is that you're going to get $1.9 million, and that's all you're going to get. And that, of course, prompted the former premier to suggest that, well, it seems clear that that previous funding has somehow evaporated under the current administration. Article grappling with expenditure, trying to make the numbers make sense. And if we believe the premier, who promised transparent accounting, that the next budget presented by the Cayman Islands government will reflect true spending, actual spending, and not just, again, a rigging of the numbers to make them fit and be in line with the public management and finance law, then the government really is in a pickle, to your point. And they may very well justifiably need all the time they can get, because they won't have the luxury to fudge the numbers or get creative with the accountant.
No massaging.
No massaging. Obviously, being able to count on Section 11.5s and Section 12, which are, again, for the benefit of the listening audience, all public spending in significant values require approval from the full Parliament, all 19 members. However, there are specific sums of money that fall within the Cabinet's remit, and I'll have to pull the law to find those specific sums of money. But there are some expenditure, some additional expenditure that can be approved just by Cabinet without going to Parliament, and these funds fall under Sections 11.5 and 12 of the Public Management and Finance Law. And that is the trough in which respective governments from time immemorial have gone back to when budget forecasts prove to be not enough, and they need more funding for things like indigent health care, NAU, Department of Children and Family Services, the welfare costs of this country, which every time have been presented at budget time undervalued, under budgeted. We know it's going to cost us more, but yet we get up twice every 4 years rather, and say it's going to cost X when we know in fact it's going to cost Y. And this isn't necessarily to be, I think, duplicitous, but it is the expectation that, well, there are ebb and flows in terms of, the earnings and the spending of government. At the beginning of the year, this money is flush. At the end of the year, money is tight. But sometimes not every project budgeted for gets off the ground. So obviously that provides some surplus spending of this economy. And I certainly give this government or any other government administration all props for really keeping us out of trouble in large part. But it is a delicate balance, and oftentimes you really can't forecast, especially now, 2 years in advance for every
So can I get clarity on what you're suggesting? Are you saying that the previous government, as in the UPM administration, would have allocated $12 million for the police,
and they didn't get it?
And you're believing that the present government might only be giving them 1.9 out of it?
Well,
I'm a percentage of it.
I'm only taking the acting governor on the veracity of her words. She's saying that what has been communicated to the police is you're going to get 1.9 mil. We have to break.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
Down every aisle, you want saving, selection, and quality. That's why we're your home store. The way to make a home. The way to make a home.
Insurance matters. It gives you the confidence to live life as you should, knowing you're protected. As a leading local insurer for over 25 years, Island Heritage has a consistent track record of providing best-in-class customer service with quick and efficient claims processing. This means insurance you can rely on when you need it most. The Island Heritage Way. Visit us online at islandheritageinsurance.com today to learn more about our home, contents, motor, marine, and commercial insurance products. Go on and live your life. With Island Heritage, you can.
Hello, pet parents. We're K-Man Vets, K-Man's most advanced veterinary clinic providing quality care and services. We are committed to being your pet's advocate and friend, offering a lifetime of care. From vaccination about us or to get in touch, please visit kmanvets.com. K-Man Vets, where compassion meets excellence.
K-Man, Units is here, the island's newest move-in and storage solution. Our robot delivery system allows you to put your unit almost anywhere while providing level loading, uploading, and minimizing shifting. What's even better, no time constraints. Pack at your own pace for moving or store as long as you need. Short-term or long-term, at the home or on the job site. Units, fast, safe, and secure. Check us out at units.ky and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
We need to talk. Okay. We've noticed you've been going to KFC a lot more than usual lately. And
that's fine. We know you love it.
we just don't understand how you could afford it.
The KFC What a Deal menu starting at just $3. Gives you lots of great choices and value. Available at KFC Baytown Plaza, Shetton Road, and in the Strand. The KFC What a Deal value meals. The deal everyone should know about. Come to KFC and enjoy a variety of tasty choices at surprising prices. KFC, so good.
The Office Hero. To claim this title, you have to make an exceedingly wise decision. Do something that benefits staff, impresses clients, all while keeping expenses low. Are you ready to be the Office Hero? Here's what to do. Call Hughes Cleaning Service. Hughes Cleaning Service will make your office shine and you a hero. Dusting, vacuuming, windows, sanitizing, and more. Hughes expert cleaners will make your office a healthy, immaculate, impressive workspace. Call 949-0734. Visit hughes-janitorial.com. Hughes, you get more than clean.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1. Powered by Health Services Authority. Committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-26-103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, and myself, Austin Harris. And, well, Ellio, and certainly apologizing to the listening audience, we got caught.
We got you.
That last break, the computer kicked in before we were finished with our train of thought. But certainly we were touching again on financing and the state of affairs as it relates to national spending of one administration after the next, but in particular, talking about the challenges being faced by the Royal Cayman Islands Police. Committed in March in cabinet for the police with the Honorable Acting Deputy Governor, Mrs. Gloria McField-Nixon, saying, well, I can't tell you about the $12 million, but I can tell you what has been communicated, and only $1.9 million of that $12 million will, in fact, actually end up in the police's hands to deal with their resource shortages. Now, what's interesting about this, Ellio, is that, we were talking about previously the pre-election financial update, which again highlighted an expected forecast prediction that 2025 and 2026 would end up in a deficit position. This $12 million that would have been approved by cabinet in March, again, let's examine the timeline. In March, why is March important? Well, on the 4th of March, we had nomination day. That is when, of course, the overall government is prorogued or dissolved, leaving only cabinet in place to be in place until such time as the next administration and their cabinet is appointed. And that is done on purpose so that the country is not left in the lurch, and AKA without leadership from one administration to the next. But what also occurs between March and the election day is cabinet is still making funding decisions, and to the point that the Honorable former Premier, Honorable Juliana Connolly, made as part of her contribution, it was during this period between gap measure to these resource concerns that the police commissioner has been lamenting since the presentation of the crime statistics. And what all of that tells me, and while some will say, well, it's kind of fishy, the pre-election update included this spending and contributed that spending to the expected deficit position at the end of 2025. But we make the point that the current administration is doing all that it can to rein in certain spending of the last administration. And if that is true, then we can use this $12 million as an example of that. 12 million certainly clearly could have been approved by cabinet under the previous administration, but
may have only given 1.9.
They may have only given 1.9 because really at this point, that's all they can do. It's not suggesting that may or may not change by November-ish, but without a doubt, the previous administration did pledge funding, which would have addressed the shortfalls in policing, which the police are complaining about today, but the new incoming government, in, again, tightening their belts, could very well, and again, they haven't said this, point blank, but one can make certain assumptions and be absolutely correct.
We're
that this is an example. We can make inferences that this is, in fact, what is occurring, much like what a writer to the program asked, what about the Cayman Brac School of Opulence? We have to expect that project is being reined in. We heard from, again, the same honorable deputy leader of the opposition urging the government to continue and move forward with his baby, the Scranton Park, which he certainly, and again, to his credit, he banged on about from 2017 to 2021 and when he was in the opposition, and from 2021 to 2025 when he got into government, he made it happen. But there is no one denying that the Scranton Park would have mirrored Central Park, a pretty penny. And again, it's those type of lofty projects that one can infer that the current administration is taking a closer look at and maybe clawing back some of that money.
I think clearly it would be within, it's perfectly fine if this government, if the new government wants to rein it in terms of the 12 million and say, hey, you know what, we can only give 2 or whatever, and we're going to keep this 10 because of the present financial position. That's their prerogative. But I think it's a level of transparency that we want to hear, because if in fact you are doing that, and this is make sure and be clear about that, to say that the previous government did give you an allocation of 12 million, we can't satisfy that at this point in time. It's not fiscally prudent. So here's 1.9.
Yes.
And I would imagine if the opposition is making a kick up about it, it's because somebody is probably not being as transparent as that, and maybe just trying to suggest something otherwise. But it clearly, if cabinet approved it, I mean, it shouldn't be much of an issue. Somewhere near the cabinet papers, which are now transparent, should reflect it.
Well, I do believe, speaking of the opposition, we might have the opposition on the line. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, Austin. Got it.
Look at that. I was right. The opposition himself is on the air. Thank you for your call, Mr. Brian. What's on your mind? I can take a guess.
Yes. Obviously, I'm paying very close attention to your show, as I always do.
Thank you.
Very good points. I think Ellio just highlighted the main point transparency. Right? So you rightfully said, of course, the government can make the necessary changes to try to make sure that we don't have a deficit. And nobody's quarreling about that because nobody wants a deficit. The question is, where are the cutbacks being made? And that's what we were trying to get down to. So, okay, fair enough. You think there's still going to be a deficit, so you're going to cut back. Are you cutting back on the police? Are you cutting back on the lofty park, as you would call it? Are you cutting back on the school? Are you cutting back on the school lunches? Transparency. Not saying that you shouldn't, because, I mean, I guess a gradual cutback is maybe smart because you also have to wait to see the projected revenues become actuals, and then you have a clearer picture. So you may not have to do it. So do it by incremental. So all I'm saying is transparency. Because if you're going to suggest within the preview all of these calculations of expenses which cause the deficit projection, then you make policy decisions to cut back on them, then we're not going to have a deficit. Hence the reason some of the other questions I asked in Parliament was, do we still project to have a deficit? If you're making cutbacks already, like, say, for instance, the police, which we think are very important, and they don't even know anything about it, and we approved it before they made the calculation for the preview, something isn't adding up. You know, so we just want the transparency. I'm not suggesting that they shouldn't or that they're wrong, but give us clarity. And I think the reason why you don't always get clarity because they don't always want to say what they're cutting.
Right.
Right, because nobody likes that. Nobody likes it. Whenever you make a cut, somebody gets upset. Yeah. And that's why we're trying to get the transparency from.
And if you can cut it, not say anything.
That's politics, and that's my job to make sure that doesn't happen. So I ask the right questions, the folks that have the answers. But then, unfortunately, the sad part about this is that the deputy governor was the one that was caught between the rock and a hard place, where she's not in cabinet making the decision. It's the ministers on what financial cuts needs to be made, and all she can say is, this is the only amount that we got for thus far.
But that's because the deputy governor position answers primarily for the police. Am I right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Indeed.
So, I mean, good talk is good talking. I think the good thing about numbers is they eventually will come to light. Eventually you have to do an end report, and we'll see where the changes are. One thing I have to pay close attention to is the cabinet decisions, wherever those cabinet decisions are made every week. Because if you monitor that, you can start to see what they're doing in the right places and the wrong places and so forth. And I'm not here to try to catch anybody. At the end of the day, if we truly going to have a deficit, that's a problem. We have to make cutbacks. Where they're going to be, let's do them together, be transparent with the people. The leader did say, as the premier, we might have to make some hard decisions. And he may be right. Yeah. Which ones are those hard ones? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Part of politics is making hard decisions. You can't hide them. So let's talk about them. And as per the grandiose part that my good friend Austin highlighted, I think that what people will find after it's completed is what it offers in respect to need for the country. It is
It was beautiful, Mr. Bryant. I still think it was beautiful. I think certainly, in a perfect world where we can afford it, then I think we would be well served to have a park of that nature right there, frankly, in the capital city. But right now, we're just, apparently, from all appearances, we're not in that lofty position. So, to your point, some savings need to be made.
Yeah, no doubt. And I don't think it will be for there. I think that it's fair to say that a lot of the things that it will offer will be beneficial to the country. For example, a seniors location, which we don't have in Georgetown at all, is important. A youth center is also important. Also, we talk about mental health. You have hundreds, I'm not sure exactly, and they can come out of the government building, get away from it all, right there next to it. And in the long term, I can promise you this. And 10, 20 years from now, everybody's going to be happy that we decide to do that rather than being concrete surrounding everything around the government building. So I'll stop there.
But I know, Minister, certainly it was close to your heart for 8 years. This is your quote-unquote baby, and nobody believes in this park more than you do. So I'm under no illusions that you don't believe in it.
I think it's our baby because it's all of ours. Yeah.
Well, don't go yet,
Okay.
Mr. Honorable Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
See, he almost called you the leader too, but he had to check himself.
Yeah. Anyway, before you go, I guess two things. One is you can always check a star off. Maybe your project will be just like Cayman Bay, the one that everyone complained about, and now you can't keep everyone out of there.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, because I know that you get a lot of beating a little bit in terms of the opposition making noise, and there goes Brian again ranting and talking nonsense, hitting again the role of the opposition and why you have to do this, why you are doing these things, and it's not just a case that you're trying to knock the government. Can we discuss that for a minute?
Yeah, I appreciate it that I actually highlighting that, Mr. Solomon, because the truth is my job is going to be the person who asks difficult questions, and they're going to say, well, why didn't you do it when you were in, and all of these other things, right? So I become the annoying politician, but I embrace my role. Some people will find it necessary. Some people learn things from the questions I ask, and some people get a good laugh. So I'm cool with that. I know my role, and I'm going to do it well. It's definitely not going to be like previous oppositions, because I'm not afraid to ask the questions, regardless of what people say. I know there's going to be people who don't support me and go, oh, there's Kenneth again, and that's fine. But there's also people out there who do support me and go, thank you, Kenneth, for holding the fire to them. It's important. I actually, believe it or not, I said to one current member now about, maybe I just go easy and try to be friends with everybody. Maybe one day things will come together or ask for my help. He said, no. The best way you can have a good government is when you have a strong opposition. Yeah. And that's the truth, right? So I hope that those people who understand that I ask the questions know that I'm doing it from accountability perspective. Because if I keep my eyes on them, that means they can't get away with anything that would not be beneficial for the country. Not suggesting that they will, but maybe knowing that I'm watching, that I'm not afraid to do these things and ask the right questions, and regardless of what people say, put pressure on them, they'll keep dot all I's and cross all T's.
Well, I wanted to highlight it because I think I equally agree with you. I think it is an important thing, and I'd like to just stress something as well. I have seen opposition where it has been extremely quiet, and you wonder if there is an opposition. Again, I'm not going to call any names, it wouldn't be fitting, but you wonder if there is an opposition, and I think it's an important role. If I could just use this to highlight it as well. Austin and I, or any other talk show, all of these media houses can make as much noise as we want. We can ask as much questions as we want, but we can't necessarily get the answers that you are expecting and you have to get when you ask it. And so I want to highlight as well that it is very, very important. Outside of the fact that it gives us something here to talk about in the program, it is a matter that we cannot simply do it, and you as a member of the opposition can. And we thank you very much for the role that you're playing.
Absolutely.
No problem. If I can just take another 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes.
That's fine.
Mrs. Solomon, you highlighted something, and I didn't know where you got your information from, but I asked the question on the basis of your comments, and also some other details that I have, which was, since the election, has there been any change in the projections for the cruise tourism numbers? Mm-hmm. And I was told on the floor of the House that no, there's no projections and no changes, which I'm strongly disagreeing with. I don't know where they got that information from, because I spoke with the Port Authority, and they've said that, yes, there has been some pullback on the numbers. And I think maybe where they were being technical about it was since the election. And I only use that date because the changes could have been before the cruise industry. But you highlighted on the show, and I meant to call you off here and ask you about it, but a particular cruise line was going to eventually start pulling from Cayman. Could you speak to that? Because apparently it doesn't seem like the ministry is aware of that in any capacity. And I need to get to the bottom of it, because it does give us a projection of how hard things may be in the future for cruise.
Yes, as far as I know, I mentioned that specifically MSC, as in, what's that, Meridian
something?
Yeah, okay. MSC, I think we all know what it is. MSC, as far as I know, expecting that to be really trending, if you'd like, next year in terms of even lower numbers.
Mediterranean.
I was just informed as a result of the FCCA conference that we can expect again this year the numbers to be between 700 now to 800,000. We dropped all the way from 1.9, 46% went down to 1,078,000. And those numbers are going to go now to 700 to 800,000, another 200,000 loss.
Well, if that's the case, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. But I want to leave you with this, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I'm not here because people are going to sit and listen and say, "Oh, with the tourism and the cruise again, Kenneth." I've accepted what the people have said. They don't want a cruise pair. I'm not banging on it. What I am trying to focus on, though, is that if we have accepted that's not what we're going to do, then so be it. The government of the day has decided that. But what we do have to do is prepare for potential fallout. So it's my job to monitor that. So I don't want people to think that because I'm asking questions about cruise, I haven't gotten over the fact that the people said no to the cruise pair. That's fine. That's a decision. I still have to look out for those people's interests who are in the industry because their lives are seriously going to be affected if the numbers continue the way they are. So I want those who may sometimes criticize, know that's the way it's coming from. So I want the government to pay attention to if it does fall like what is projected, what are they going to do about it? So I'll leave you gentlemen there.
What's the alternative? Yeah.
Correct. Indeed. Thank you so much for giving me the audience. God bless you. Have a good show.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan, for listening to the program and certainly being no stranger to the phone lines. We certainly do appreciate the time you take as well. And to his point, there are two sides of Parliament. There's the government and there is Her Majesty's or His Majesty's loyal opposition. And as the saying goes, whilst the government will have its way, the opposition must have its say. And all of that is part of the good governance model that certainly is enshrined as part of our Constitution and arguably our way of life. MSC, just going back to a previous conversation, thank you, Google, stands for Mediterranean Shipping Company. Did get a WhatsApp message that speaks to something I said, but also speaks to something you said, Ellio. So I think it's a bit of a feather in cap for both of us, and I just get the distinct honor of reading it. It says, Mr. Austin, thank you for your commentary on the national public spending and the projected deficit as at year-end 2025 of the Cayman Islands government. You are right. The reckless overspending and uncontrolled use of loan funds took place throughout the entire term of the last government, both the PACT and the UPM. For example, approximately $500 million in new borrowings were made in the past year. And to your colleague's point, 4 members, including the Premier, Honorable Andre Ebanks, Ministers Kathy J. Ebanks and Isaac Rankin of the current National Coalition for Caymanian government, were ministers from 2021 until shortly before 2024, and were there, right there, hook, line, and sinker during those past years when those borrowings and spending were being conducted and carried out. So it was and arguably is on them, the past government. Now go and fix that mess now as the current government.
Yeah, as I said, if they have to go looking for dead bodies, they don't have to cross the aisle. They'll be able to pull in some of their own seats.
They don't have far to go at all.
Figure it out.
At all, indeed.
But I will stress in a couple of minutes again, just to underscore, I think it's very important that we all understand the role of the opposition. And I have seen opposition, I mean, really, that sit there so quiet. It's like, ladies and gentlemen, do you really want to be expending millions of dollars every year in salaries for people who just sit there and warm the seats? That's not the purpose. And you don't want the opposition to be destructive, but you need the opposition to ask the same questions that you would want to ask if you were there. Because the reality is that you can't ask it. And if you can't ask it, you're not going to get the answer necessarily. Mm-hmm. The opposition would be entitled to get the answers. And we need that information. So that is the role of the opposition. Let's continue to pray for the opposition, the same as we would pray for the government, that they will ask all the questions that we would like to have answered. Yeah. And let's hope that they do it in the advocacy manner, as Mr. Miller has rightly identified, in a respectful manner. But we want to make sure that they get asked those questions and that they get answers, because the answers are on our behalf. I mean, I'll just give you an example. What if Mr. Bryan didn't ask all these questions? Well, I can tell you we'd probably have at least 5 less news items to talk about, wouldn't we?
Right.
So it is very, very important that we recognize the role of the opposition. And I think Mr. Bryan and the rest of the team there seems to be doing, so far, a pretty decent, if not a sterling job.
No, absolutely. And just taking us back, because it's about 55 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Yeah, 55 past 5, giving us, give or take 3 or 4 minutes before we have to wrap it up. Well, wrap it up to go to the news, that is, and another 30 minutes remaining on the program. But, we were talking certainly yesterday over the issue of the cost of living and the rising cost of living. We were talking about, of course, undoubtedly the cost of energy. And whilst we certainly take the position that the cost of your mortgage or rent and banking concerns are weighted more heavily than perhaps what we're paying in utility bills, but certainly there is no disagreement that the high utility bills are payable not just as part of your monthly expenditure, but that same utility bill is also a factor in terms of the increase in food prices, just to say the least. Obviously, refrigeration costs and refrigeration runs on utilities, electricity, gas is used to produce electricity, etc. That are associated with the cost of living. But arguably, to your point, certainly your mortgage or rent accounts for anywhere between 40 or 50% of your monthly expenditure. And we talked about the fact that the government of the day, arguably the previous administration, missed a golden opportunity to renegotiate the terms of our utility service and what we pay against the backdrop that right now the current monopoly utility provider is in court trying to prevent the release of their cost of electricity, what it really costs them to produce versus what it costs us to pay for. They were also behind, a move to hinder the value for solar report, which was delayed for the better part of 2 years whilst the monopoly company fought to keep that otherwise transparency at bay. But today we see in the Jamaica Observer that the country of Jamaica is, in fact, leading in terms of having these discussions. Whilst we in Cayman missed the boat, the Jamaica Public Services, that's JPS, all island licensed to supply electricity without renegotiation of the current terms and is open to exploring other contracts with other interested parties. So whilst we missed the boat in Cayman to perhaps lower the cost of living in a meaningful way, the country of Jamaica are not following suit. They are clearly learning from our bad example and are seeking to enter into negotiations of their own, saying to their company providers, no, not go so. We're going to sit down at the table. We're going to sharpen our pencils and have a discussion before we move forward.
The timing on that one couldn't have been more perfect, Mr. Harris. And then, of course, the wonderful term that you use, missing the boat.
Yes.
That has happened not just on the electricity, but on the cruise side as well. Other persons countries seem to be benefiting from our, I don't know what to call it, our remisses.
Yes, indeed.
Our shortcomings.
Absolutely.
How much time do we have?
Not enough time to keep going, and certainly not enough time to make sure we get caught a second time.
I hear
so we do have to pause and take a short commercial break, check in with the top of the hour news brought to you by our partner in news, the BBC. But keep it locked. There will be more Straight Talk still to come as we move into our final half hour right here on Bobo 103.1 FM.
Bobo.
The BBC is the world's most trusted news source.
And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News, the world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman.
On FM, online, and on your smart speaker.
This is Bobo 103.1.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes, thick black smoke,
A tremendous legal victory.
crucial elections,
Destructive wind.
a search and recovery operation,
race against time.
An imminent threat.
flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker.
The home of the BBC World Service.
This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Govinda Gill with the BBC News. The US Senate has narrowly passed Donald Trump's sweeping tax and spending bill on the casting vote of Vice President J.D. Vance. The chamber was deadlocked after 3 Rand Paul, a Republican senator for Kentucky, opposed it.
Big, not so beautiful bill is passed now. The one thing that's for certain is that next year the deficit will be bigger than this year. To get the vote of Alaska Senator, billions and billions and billions more were added. We don't have any of that money. All of it's borrowed. All of that spending will have to be borrowed.
But the Republican senator for South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, welcomed its approval in the Senate.
This bill does a lot of good things. The border is the most aggressive border security package in the history of the country. The tax cuts were going to expire in December. There had been a $4 trillion tax increase. That's a big deal. We achieved cost-cutting savings, the largest in the history of the country. Some people say not enough, I understand, but it's the largest in the history of the country.
The bill now returns to the House of Representatives, where it's likely to meet further resistance from within Mr. Trump's own party, which holds a slim majority. The jury in the sex trafficking trial of the rap star Sean Diddy Combs has reached a verdict on most of the charges against him, though the details have not been made public. Crucially, the jury is deadlocked on the most serious count of racketeering conspiracy and has been asked to try again. Madeline Halpert reports.
The judge basically told them you need to go back, you have a duty to deliberate, you have a duty to talk with your other jurors and try to reach some sort of agreement. It is the most complicated charge and also the most serious charge. He faces life in prison potentially if he's convicted of it. So it makes sense that this is the charge that the jurors are taking the longest time to kind of go over. It's a hugely complicated charge that is difficult for the average person to understand.
The British government has faced a substantial revolt by its own MPs over legislation aimed at making it harder for some people to claim health and disability-related benefits. 44 Labour members voted against the changes, but the bill still passed due to Labour's huge parliamentary majority. The Labour MP, Ian Lavery, opposed the government and said the entire bill should have been withdrawn.
This is a shambles, you know. This is an absolute shambles. I've never seen anything like it. MPs from all parties in there tonight were embarrassed nation about where and how we actually arrived at this point.
World News from the BBC. The White House has confirmed that some US weapons deliveries to Ukraine have been halted over concerns that US stockpiles are too low. The shipments would have included artillery shells and Patriot air defense missiles. Ukraine has been urgently requesting more Patriots to protect its cities from Russian attack. A White House spokesperson said the decision was made to put America's interests first. The US Agency for International Development has officially stopped implementing foreign aid. In a statement, America's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, said US foreign assistance would now be used to advance US interests, invest in America's allies and counter China. Andrew Ochieng reports.
Mr. Rubio said USAID had spent hundreds of billions of dollars across the world since the Cold War ended, yet development goals had not been met, instability had worsened, and the US had become even more unpopular. He said in 2023, most countries in sub-Saharan Africa did not vote with the US on essential resolutions at the UN, despite receiving more than $160 billion since 1991. He also said China was viewed more favorably than the US in the Middle East and North Africa, yet America had invested around $90 billion in the region.
Costa Rica's Supreme Court has called on Congress to strip President Rodriguez Chavez of his immunity from prosecution so he can be tried on corruption charges. The court also requested the culture minister, Jorge Rodriguez, stand trial in the same case. The politicians deny allegations that they helped direct kickbacks to a top government ally. In basketball, the NBA's most valuable player, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, has agreed to sign a new contract worth $300 million with the Oklahoma City Thunder team. The deal would make Shai's average annual salary of $71 million the highest in the league's history. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here, proudly brought to you by Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcast live over YouTube and Facebook with the key search words Straight Talk Radio Show. You can also find us on the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page as well. We're your hosts, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, and the time in studio is now 7 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock as we move into our final 23 minutes left on the air for today. Just a quick shout out coming from both ourselves, but also a member of the listening audience. It reads, "Good evening, gentlemen. As usual, I thoroughly enjoy listening to your show. I just want to give a big shout out to all the UCCI graduates, careers, and we just want to show some love by recognizing those students who will be a part of tonight's 2025 UCCI commencement ceremonies. I will tell you that for those of you who are unable to attend, it will be broadcast live over YouTube, but nothing ever starts on time in Cayman. So if you decide to pick them up just as we're about to sign off, then I promise you, you won't miss anything interesting and of priority.
Of course, we always want to encourage people to attend in person. I'm pretty sure it's much more appreciated.
Yes, I would have to agree.
But yeah, congratulations to all those persons who will be graduating, young people who will be graduating today.
Yes.
And of course, all of the staff, the faculty that played a role in shaping them.
Sure.
I did want to touch, I posted something on my Facebook page again yesterday, I think it was, in relation to this case with Miss, I think I get the pronunciation correct, Shanalian Bush.
Was that your secret topic that you hinted to yesterday?
No, this isn't the top secret one.
Not the top reason. Okay, fair enough.
I'm saving that for another day.
All right, my friend.
That's going to be like an Iran bombing or something. I gotta be more strategic. I gotta fly west knowing I'm going east.
There you go. Well, forgive me for interrupting. Please continue.
But Ms. Shanalian Bush, I just want to draw this to your attention. You may have seen this in the newspapers. I think I saw it specifically in the Compass in terms of her going to the Privy Council. Yes. I think some of the things that is very important to note is that you would have had one particular administration during COVID, and this particular situation would have been that they made changes to the labor law. And they made it that churches, and specifically in this case of relevance, that churches and charitable organizations would be exempted from the labor law or from the Labor Act. This is important because here would have been a person like Shanalian Borden who is actually thinking that they're governed by this labor law. And little did she know that just a year prior to her incident where she refused to take the COVID shot, she would have discovered when she went to court that the courts would have said to her, sorry, you don't get any protections. And you remember this now, almost like we say zero protections. You have no protection under the law because charitable organizations were made exempt from the law. What bothers me about this, well, several things bother me about it, but where is the transparency on this? I remember, and let's go back prior. You might ask, well, what happened prior in the labor law? Well, let's put it this way. The labor law stated before this exemption, it stated that everyone who is employed in these islands must fall subject to the labor law. That's pretty much what it stated. I'm paraphrasing it, but everyone in the island falls subject to the labor law, including the government. Now, it said that you could have internal policies in your company which exceeded the rights and the abilities of the labor law, but you couldn't go anything less than the labor law. So where was the transparency? And you can't say that people didn't have time during COVID to hear, because, I mean, all we had time to do was sit around and listen, you know? I mean, we even had to line up in our alphabetical order to go get our food. So it's not like we didn't have time to listen, but I'm curious. Why didn't that happen? And you could say we're crying over spilled milk, but no. Why I think this is important, because at the minimum, we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. You need to have transparency where persons are not running around in this particular case thinking that I'm protected like any other employee under the labor law, when in fact you are not. So basically, if there's no contractual obligations within these charitable organizations and or churches, then you are royally, you know what I'm going to say.
Out of luck.
Thank you, Austin. That was just the word I was looking for, I think.
I think, yes, I'm sure it was. Sure it was.
I was looking for decency. Thank you, Austin.
You were, I know.
I was thinking of an S word, mind you. I don't want you to think that...
We share the same mind.
I don't want you to think I was going in a, retro on that
Too far afield, were you?
yeah, that's a good example. So either way, we chuckle, but this is very important. I mean, just imagine you and I, ladies and gentlemen, working, like wherever it is, you're at the gas station, you work in a bank, you're a doctor or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want you to be empathetic for a moment. There you are thinking that surely I'm entitled to 3 weeks vacation because I've been here for X amount of years, and I think I've had a read of the labor law.
Mm-hmm.
Or that you might think that this is an unfair dismissal. And of course I can take this to the labor tribunal and get my rights enforced. All of this little nonsense you're thinking, only to realize that it is nonsense, because the government in the middle of the night, while you were asleep, or it could be while you're awake, went ahead and changed the law and said, let's take that guy out of it. Let's take that lady out of it. We are making that particular area exempt. I don't think that those sort of changes should happen, could happen, would be allowed to be happening without the public, at the minimum, actually knowing that it's done. And I can't also, for the life of me, figure out exactly why it was done. That's another thing that bothers me. Why exactly were they exempted? Again, perhaps inquiring minds want to know, and we want to figure out what the changes are. But either way, or why the changes were made, but either way, Ms. Shanley and Bodden was terminated for refusing to take the COVID shot. And if it means anything, I wasn't in favor of the COVID shot either. But terminated, and as a result of that, now is slowly learning the painful truth that her government robbed her of her rights under the labor law. And I think that I just want to make sure that persons are educated, enlightened, and elevated as to this fact. And at the minimum, we need to be able to make sure that going forward, we can demand a little bit greater transparency. If not involvement, at the minimum, we should get a little bit more transparency so that we're not necessarily thinking one thing only to experience the other.
Just for a point of clarification, because I heard you mention the person's name twice now, and I have it, and I think this came from the pages of The Independent, that it's Shelly-Ann Bush.
I could have the pronunciation wrong. Don't get me wrong. Shelly-Ann, is that what it is?
Shelly-Ann Bush, not Bodden.
I thought I said Bush.
You said Bodden.
Oh, my goodness. Well, then I made a fraud.
So, she is challenging the Labor Act, which, to your point, has removed unfair dismissal rights for charity employees. She, of course, was the former employee with the Pines Retirement Home, and her present case that is currently before the Privy Council centers on two constitutional rights. The one, the fair right to trial under Section 7, and the anti-discrimination rights contained under Section 16. Section 7 guarantees everyone the right to a fair trial and access to the courts, while Section 17 prohibits government discrimination based on protected characteristics. And again, on the basis of this, Ms. Bush was terminated from her employment because she refused to take the COVID vaccine, a point in which, unfortunately, the Grand Court and the Court of Appeal did not provide, justice from her standpoint, and she took it to the highest court in the Commonwealth, and that is, of course, the Privy Council. The Privy Council has the final right of appeal over the Cayman Islands, and it continues to reserve judgment. The decision, which is presently before them, will determine whether the charity sector employees can, in fact, be excluded from the standard employment protections. But that may be a bit of a moot point given the actions of the current administrations just last week in terms of bringing churches, at least, in line with rules associated with I think it was the NPO they suggested.
But I think that's something different.
Was it?
I think that kind of goes along.
Churches to comply with all NPO rules.
All the AML stuff and stuff, I think, is where that's going, a slightly different direction.
Okay.
This is fundamental. And like I said, I can't wrap my head around it. If you know the answer, feel free to send us the answer, because why exactly were they removed or exempted from having the rules of the Labor Act or the labor law applied to them is beyond me. I don't know why that happened. But either way, if you are working, and I think that there is quite a few thousand, I think I looked it up, and potentially there's some gray areas, but trying to figure out the little gaps via the Economic and Statistics Office, I think there's potential around 3,000 people that are employed with respect to churches and charitable are not protected under the Labor Act.
Indeed. 17, now 18 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, giving us, give or take, just over 12 minutes before we have to wrap it up again for today. But the phone lines remain open. 745-2626 is the number. If you've got a comment, a question, or general viewpoint and topics that we have not yet covered but would like to, as we say, get it off your chests, now is a good opportunity for you to do so. Just checking the WhatsApp lines, friend of mine, and they've gone quiet. So
yeah, and again, we'll just take this opportunity. You and I were discussing earlier on. Important to note that the LRC, and I keep getting that one twisted up too. I can't believe I said BOD. I can't believe I said BOD.
It was a Freudian slip. I know you didn't mean it.
Oh my! Anyway,
I never knew my
father. But anyway, the issue of the LRC with respect to persons should know that the government is saying we're moving forward with the lottery and we're moving forward with the marijuana. God bless us. We're going to need it. I don't know really what the world is coming to here. If somebody had asked me these things 40 plus years ago, I would have said never. I don't know where this country is going. I don't know where the world is going. I'm just happy to be along for the ride. I can sit as an innocent bystander and look at things, hopefully.
51% approved national lottery and 55, almost 56 approved the decriminalization.
And up in smoke, apparently.
Not yet, but it will.
So the Chi and Chung, hey, good thing we didn't step in that, huh? Bottom line of it is, you should know that we are now
to change color.
We are now on the conveyor belt. Proud of ourselves as Caymanians. We are now working towards implementation of a national lottery, which, by the way, from my experience when I was in office many moons ago, that the studies showed at that point in time that the government couldn't gain anything more than arguably $12 million from a national lottery, which will probably just be enough to deal with all the persons who have addictions for gambling. But nevertheless, we move forward that the lottery is being worked on by the LRC, and so is the issue of marijuana. So amongst other things, for example, to be determined by the LRC would be things such as, well, what exactly amounts to a small amount of marijuana?
Yes.
Is it a wholesome bread bag or is it like a one spliff? I mean, tough decisions will have to be made here in terms of what amount is going to be. And then there's other issues with respect to lottery and, so Hola, we're on the way there. LRC is looking at it. I don't have anything in terms of a specific time frame that this is supposed to happen. But I got the inference somewhere I drew the inference that it was expecting some feedback by about October time frame is something that struck me. I think I heard that coming from somewhere. I don't want to quote because I seem to be getting it wrong in terms of name calling today.
Well, as it relates to the decriminalization of cannabis, the Honorable Premier spoke on this issue.
Maybe I heard him
also attached to this article, suggesting that the Law Reform Commission will evaluate and make recommendations regarding key matters such as the proposed possession thresholds, which, of course, to your point, is what constitutes a small quantity, as well as the other legal definitions, addressing the levels of administrative penalties, alignment with existing drug enforcement, as well as regional and international obligations. It will also look at the potential social impacts and safeguarding of vulnerable populations.
Does it have there by any chance that he said they're expecting something back by October? Because somewhere I heard.
Yes. Once government receives and reviews the commission report, Ebanks, the Premier, said Parliament will be updated, adding that he hoped to have an outline of the body of work by October.
Oh, I see.
So to your point,
my brain is working.
Yeah, much like the whole public transportation plan, certainly the Law Reform Commission report should be ready. Both of those items should both be ready for the strategic policy statement, which we understand will occur in November. One writer to the program asks the question, why is decriminalization of weed so horrible? Why aren't we talking about the criminalization of alcohol? Ellio?
Well,
why?
I think that we would be having the same discussion about alcohol. I'm glad. Well, first of all, I'm glad they raised the point. How much time do we have here? Time check.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes. 5 minutes.
You know, but I suspect there's a level of tongue in cheek there. But you know, let's address it as it is. They're saying, why don't we talk about the criminalization of alcohol? Yep. Well, that's precisely what it was at one point. It was a criminal offense. It's are now allowable substance. It is now decriminalized. And we see the harms and stuff that come out of it. And there's challenges outside of a buzz and feeling like you're spinning in a bed before you fall asleep. We can hardly see any health benefits that come from alcohol. And definitely doesn't add much to marital status. It doesn't do much for driving in your car. And the very fact that it says you must be over 18, in at least this country, before you consume it should tell you that there's a problem. So you make a very meritorious point. And we are now at the same crossroads, and we are now taking another prohibited substance and decriminalizing it. And it's going to be challenging. I know that the tobacco law was talking about, which, by the way, of course, marijuana is not tobacco. But you had to smoke a certain distance from buildings. You couldn't smoke inside. You know, there's a myriad of different things. So there's a lot of things that the LRC will have to be dealing with in terms of marijuana because it's not a tobacco product.
Yeah.
And I really don't personally want to have to be that every time I'm going to the restaurant or going somewhere that I have to be getting high on someone else's smoke. I would hope that that's not going to happen.
Well, if I learned anything or read anything in terms of what was discussed at that time, and again, we point out that there was only us and maybe, us talking about these referendum questions, particularly lottery and the decriminalization.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we run any sort of risk that the decriminalization will mean that, now cannabis smokers will have the same public freedoms as cigarette smokers to do so in public.
Not immediate anyway.
It suggests to me that perhaps you can still consume it for private use, arguably in the privacy of your own home. But it just simply removes the criminal element of prosecution. You can still face a fine for possessing it. You can still face a fine, for smoking it. And again, I think the Law Reform Commission will determine what's a small amount. Because if you're found, for example, if we decide that 2 ounces is a small amount and you're found with 3, then seriously, that the decriminalization will mean, will allow cannabis smokers to do so in the public domain. I'd be very surprised by that.
I think that you will get that, and I don't think it'll be very long either. There's already persons who are smoking marijuana in the broad daylight. okay? You can just be standing, not calling any names. You can just be standing in your front yard, and there's someone right there in their front yard smoking marijuana, and it hasn't been decriminalized yet. So you can imagine when it's decriminalized to the point where even the police is like, I waste my time with that.
Well, I think in that scenario,
if they are smoking it out public.
I think that would be permissible because, again, you are within the confines of your own private property, albeit to your point that these days, in many cases,
that your front yard goes into my front
join the
yard.
next property, and therefore your next door neighbor may not be a smoker, and that may cause a bit of a rift. But then again, all he needs to do is the next door neighbor just to get a whiff. And maybe, just maybe, he might relax a little bit and not remember.
Ellio, the man was being charitable.
So aggravated for.
I should appreciate him for his charity.
Ever in the history of ever has anybody ever overdosed on cannabis. But anyway, I think the writer makes a good point when he talks about, the two drugs are not created equal. We have lost more lives in this country by alcohol. And alcohol has arguably ruined more lives than cannabis. And to your point, though, there was a time, ironically enough, there was a time when hemp or cannabis was legal and made illegal, arguably by the pharmaceutical companies who wanted to sell aspirin. Whereas alcohol, there was a time it was illegal. And then afterwards, following the years of prohibition, was then made legal again.
What does marijuana have to do with aspirin? I never heard that before.
Well, it's just another pharmaceutical drug, and the argument has been made that cannabis has faced arguably draconian criminality for a long time, largely because of the benefits that it does in fact possess, in the interest of selling pharmaceutical drugs. You got a headache, take an aspirin. Don't take a joint. Yeah. You got cancer, take the latest, pharmaceutical craze of chemotherapy, then perhaps, take the oil that comes from the plant that perhaps is called CBD and has much greater opportunities for actually healing a person. And these are all, studies have been done on all of these things, so don't take my word for it. But like some things, my colleague and I are not all necessarily on the same page on this topic. But that is what makes for a fantastic relationship. Tomato,
I grew up around a lot of pot smokers. Didn't see much come out of it. Sorry.
No, I get you. Well, that's all the time we have for you today. But tomorrow, tune in as we host Roy Budden and his new book, Deconstructing Development, right here on Straight Talk, only on Bobo 103.1 FM.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is